our discussion with Mayor Pete and a number of the campaign organizers from across the country. We're going to lead off by starting off with me kicking it to my treasurer / secretary for the DNC's Native American Caucus, Keith Harper. Keith was the first ever Native American ambassador in the history of the United States, is somebody that has had a long history in terms of working for and with Indian country in the political sphere, and somebody who I consider one of my best friends and truly a mentor in terms of, that means he's old because I'm old, so that makes him really, really old. As a mentor for me in terms of really in 2007 getting me involved in President Obama's campaign, and he's here to introduce one of our friends. So Keith, why don't you take it from there? Again, Miigwech, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for helping put all this together today. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks, Ryan. And let me just take a moment to thank you for your extraordinary and steadfast leadership in the DNC, for the Democratic Party, and in the Biden-Harris campaign, among many other things that you've done on the political side. So it's my great pleasure and honor to introduce Mayor Pete Buttigieg. When I think he was first emerging on the national stage, I was in Geneva, Switzerland, serving in the State Department, and so I didn't really, I wasn't first in the know as this dynamic political figure that is the future of the Democratic Party, and I quickly came to recognize his singular voice in uniting Americans. And I think he ran a campaign that was stellar, that was unifying, that understood fundamentally that the issues of people in the inner city are not all that different from those who were formerly in manufacturing jobs and those on reservations and many other places, that there is these economic challenges that we face as a nation that is driving a lot of the disunity. And frankly, it permits certain types of politicians to exploit that disunity. So you spoke to that, Mayor Pete, in a way that was profound and in a way that galvanized many people, including myself. And that's why I was so glad to support you during the primary. And then, of course, we're now all supporting the Biden-Harris ticket. I think, if anything, last night demonstrated exactly why this is the most important election of our lifetime. So with that, I just want to say we've appreciated your leadership generally and specifically in working with Indian country. You've always been there, as Ryan has said, and I know you will continue to be there. So thanks for joining us today, and welcome. We look forward to your remarks. You're on mute.
How about now?
Yep.
All right, Ambassador, first of all, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for your leadership. Just earlier today, I was addressing the Atlantic Council on the subject of international relations, and the topic of the face America puts forward came up. And our diplomatic corps, like the ranks of our elected officials, would benefit from better representing the U.S. And the U.S. is a more convincing, I think, leader around the world when the people greeting Americans who come in the doors of an embassy, whether it's the person working out their visa or the ambassador of the United States, reflects the American people. And so your pioneering story represents that, and we need so much more. So I want to thank you and acknowledge you. I want to thank Ryan Ramirez for your leadership and for the invitation to come here, and everybody on this call, because I am mindful that I am addressing perhaps the most energetic and reliable membership and constituency that the Democratic Party has. And I'll come back to that at the end of my remarks. I also want to acknowledge that this is September 30th. I don't have an orange shirt to hand, but I know that this is a day that is set aside for ensuring that we acknowledge and remember what happened with residential schools, a story that's probably best known in Canada, but needs to be remembered for how it reverberated here in the US too. And the process of coming to terms with the abuses in the forcible relocation, re-education and the really destructive things that happened in those residential schools led to, as far as I know, the first time that a Truth and Reconciliation Commission took place on North American soil as our neighbors in Canada grappled with those realities. It's a model we would do well to consider here in the United States, whether it's the history of the relationship with Native Americans or a whole number of other ways in which we're reminded that the past and the present are reverberating so powerfully here in the US. I think that all of us are in a little bit of shock today, having seen what we saw last night. And it is not the first time that I've felt somehow shocked and unsurprised at the same time. We know every single day this president's in office what we're walking into and what's going to happen. And yet there is such pain in knowing that children were watching last night. Knowing that our adversaries were watching last night, and knowing that every moment that this president turns up the distraction machine is a moment we're not talking about the issues that are affecting Americans. And these very issues that the president's failed to lead on, that the Republican Party has failed to lead on, these are often issues that hit hardest in Indian country. There is no question that COVID-19 has impacted both economically and medically, has impacted Indian country more than perhaps any other part of the US. There is no question that the need for us to do better, the long-standing need for us to do better by the Indian Health Service or the funding of health support for Indian country, or frankly, just the tribal sovereignty issues that come up again and again are at stake. Not just when it comes to COVID, but so many of the things we're thinking about now as we contemplate the future of the courts. It's worth mentioning that even some of those we consider to be the best jurists in our time from many perspectives proved not to have the kind of understanding that was really needed in order to make the right kind of decisions judicially with Indian country in mind. And I fear that's only accelerated with this White House and their rush to populate the bench. And whether we're talking about Oliphant, whether we're talking about Carcieri, we know what needs to happen. And we know that the Biden-Harris administration would be committed to setting us on the right path. You know, in my own hometown of South Bend, where the Pikagan Band of the Potawatomi Indians has called home for centuries, we were very proud that the first time federally recognized land in trust was identified in Indiana, the first time that Indian country officially came to our state in a federally recognized way, that it was within the city limits of South Bend, and it happened to be during the time that I served as mayor. And so I saw firsthand the importance of that intergovernmental relationship, the importance of that mutual regard and exchange between tribal authorities and state, local, and federal government. And I can tell you from the time that I've spent with Senator Harris, with Vice President Biden, just how much commitment there is to that in the ticket. But of course, this is the other thing I really want to mention, and I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but I just want to encourage you in this work. We're not going to get caught treating the presidency like it's the only office that matters. So many of these issues cash out at the state and the local level. And I know that you are doing such important work in states across the US to ensure that we're electing great Democrats at every level. And some of the gains we've made are so inspiring. Two members of Congress that I've been proud to support, Deb Haaland and Sharice Davis, representing the first Native American women to take those seats. People in state assemblies and all of those levels that have so much power. It's not just that they're the bench for the future, it's that in our American system, they hold power in the present. And whether we're talking about tribal lands or whether we're talking about healthcare or whether we're talking about the economy, we know the impact we're going to have. But this brings me to the other thing I wanted to mention. You know, the first time I came to really understand voter suppression and intimidation was in my very first job out of college, working in Arizona, where many tribal citizens, especially members of the Navajo Nation, represented one of the most loyal and effective constituencies for the Democratic Party. And I began to hear stories about vehicles showing up on reservations, unmarked, just in a vaguely intimidating way, just enough to make some people think twice about whether they wanted to be seen going to the polls. Of course, now voter suppression and intimidation of people of color has become something we're much more aware of. But unfortunately, it's also become a much more potent tactic, making its way to page 1 of the Republican playbook. We've got a lot of work to do to make sure we beat back those voter suppression efforts. And the best thing we can do about it is to mobilize our voters. Look, there are brilliant legal minds who I know are working, whether it's with Fair Fight or Democracy Docket or other efforts led by the DNC itself, to make sure that we keep winning in the courts. But on the ground, we've got to make sure that everybody has a plan to vote, that any place it can be done, we're encouraging our supporters to vote by mail. And when necessary, that everybody has a plan to vote safely in person early, if at all possible, and be ready for the efforts they're going to undertake on the back end to undercut the legitimacy of the elections themselves. There's so much at stake, more than ever, especially in Indian country. And so I want to thank you for the excellent organizing work that you have been doing, because it's all led us to this point, and it's never mattered more. I think we got a little time for questions, so I won't continue with the monologue, but I just again want to thank you for everything that you do for the Democratic Party, everything you do for those members that you represent, tribal citizens and US citizens at the same time. And I'm very much looking forward to the country we could be living in. And even believe, as bleak as 2020 has been up until now, that the story of how this year went, the story of what 2020 will mean in American history, hasn't yet been fully written. And the last and most important chapter is what we're writing together right now.
Thank you, Mayor Pete, for those inspiring words. I think we're all on the same page with you that we have to leave it all on the field in these next few weeks and ensure that the Senate, the House, and of course the presidency, along with candidates up and down the ballot, come November. So we have a few questions. The first question is from the president of the Bay Mills Indian Community, Brian Newland. Brian, you have the floor.
Hey, all right, thanks, Keith. Hey, Mayor Pete, it's great to see you and be with you this afternoon.
Thanks, Brian, good to be with you.
I'm up here in northern Michigan on the Canadian border, where it's
fantastic.
Yeah, winter's already started. So just very quickly, you know, Vice President Biden and Senator Harris often say representation matters. I've heard you say that as well. The Obama-Biden administration was historic in having a cabinet and appointments that was representative of a very diverse country. Despite all this, though, we've never had a Native American cabinet secretary, and there are very few natives on the federal bench. What can we all do to ensure that President Biden helps Indian country break our own glass ceiling?
Well, it's a great question. And first of all, I want to send my greetings to you. I married into northern Michigan, so it's a part of the country that's close to my heart. Just yesterday, I was in Traverse City with Dr. Biden, and I know that Indian country is such an important part of the Midwest, even though in the public imagination, sometimes people think only about other parts of the country. And you're right, we've still got a huge representation gap and also a chance to do something about it. Whether we're talking about the federal bench, where again, even some of our most accomplished jurists, they just don't have the context because of not having the lived experience. And a lot of important dimensions of tribal sovereignty have, I think, really been missed in the formation of case law. I think this body, this caucus, has been at the forefront of helping to educate candidates, even non-lawyer candidates like myself, about the importance of these issues in a way that means that they just command a lot more attention among Democrats than they would have even 10 or 20 years ago. So that's on the right track. But we got to make sure that remains visible as we, God willing, move into a transition and build a new administration. Same could be said at the cabinet level. And of course, those maybe less glamorous but incredibly important appointed positions, of which there are more than 2,000 presidentially appointed positions through the federal government. So what I can tell you is that I know firsthand how committed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are to this, but also your own role is going to continue to matter. And you can count me as an ally in making sure that we identify and support great candidates who will bring that lived experience And, time after time, we've learned that when we have a decision-making body that actually reflects the full range and diversity of the American people, it winds up making better decisions, not just for that underrepresented community they're from, but for the whole as well. And there's no question in my mind that all Americans, tribal and non-tribal citizens, are better served when that perspective is fully represented, and we've clearly got a long way to go.
Thanks, Mayor Pete. Our next question is from Councilman Freddie Lane from the Lummi Nation. He's had a little video trouble, but Freddie, you can ask your question, please. You have the floor.
Thank you, Ambassador Harper. Siamanis Jalicha, Salkeda. My Christian name's Freddie Lane. My Indian name's Salkeda, but I apologize for my video. Thank you, Mayor Pete, and all those behind the scenes making this event possible. Haishka, shout out to Teresa Sheldon, Native American Political Director at the DNC, Haishka, and raise our hands to everybody that's participating. Mayor Pete, I'm one of two openly two-spirited council members of the Lummi Nation here in Bellingham, Washington. And I have, I guess, a couple of questions, if you could. At Lummi Nation, we've strived to mend and bridge with our local communities. But racism is nothing new to American Indians and Indigenous people around the world, recognizing that even we as the first Americans were not even granted citizenship until June 2nd, 1924. How do we continue to bridge our communities and unify our nations? And then again, secondly, how do we get more Democratic candidates to tour the battleground states and to come out to rural communities like Suquamish, Lummi, Tulalip, and all of us to visit our neighboring communities? I think that would be really powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I think, the more engagement there is, the better. It was one of the things that we really prided ourselves on during my campaign, visiting communities and parts of the country that just hadn't heard from us. And as we did it, sometimes shining a light. For example, a lot of people didn't know about the tribal presence in South Carolina, and we were really honored to visit with tribal leaders there. And so there's a real opportunity. Obviously, it's complicated or attenuated by what's going on with the pandemic, but maybe in some ways there's an opportunity or a blessing there, which is even as we wait for it to be safe to do more large-scale gathering and travel in these kinds of communities, there's more opportunity than ever to virtually connect, and that's something that might not have been considered as recently as a year ago. I also think your question shines a light on the opportunity, your first question, that exists for this country to really live into what might be best about us. We've always been imperfect in being a democracy, in being fully inclusive and representative, and of the many people who have been minoritized and excluded in this country. It's really two groups in different ways, Black Americans and Native Americans, who are actually literally formally prevented from citizenship by the letter of the law. And as you said, this is something that only really formally began to change for so many Americans about 100 years ago. In that experience, I think also lies a kind of moral authority. It's one of the reasons I do so passionately believe in the increased representation by Native Americans and Indigenous Americans, not just in elected office and on the bench and in those positions of policymaking and power, but in public service and in the diplomatic service, because there are so many Indigenous peoples around the world who see their own experience in what has happened in the United States. And while there are so many wrongs, historic and ongoing echoes and continuing manifestations of those wrongs that we've got to confront as a country where racism is simply part of the air we breathe, not some isolated issue, not some quaint historical question. And by the way, not something as simple as defeating the likes of the Aryan Nation and the KKK, but really something that every institution and in many ways every person in this country is imbibed in some way. It also means that the project of overcoming that, the project of confronting that, working through it, and coming out better, is something that would have meaning for the entire world. By the 2040s, the United States is poised to become a country with no majority, racial majority, with no white majority. And if in the time ahead of us, we actually became the fully inclusive, fully anti-racist, fully representative, fully democratic country we might become, if we actually did that, then by the 2040s, we would stand as something unique in the entire world, which is a large scale, fully multicultural, fully democratic society. If we could actually achieve that, what we would represent, that would be as powerful in the 21st century world as the emergence of our version of democracy that we had in the 18th century would have been in the world then. And this time a much more true and full expression of it. So that's the hopeful side of what I see as we consider the very dark road that this president has led us down. And there's no getting to that better, brighter future without being not only inclusive of, but I think really led by Native Americans in so many ways. And that's part of why the cultivation of political leadership and people in power that you are advocating and representing, that's part of why it matters so much.
Thank you.
Mayor Pete, you've mentioned a few times the importance of representation, and we are so happy that with Deb Haaland and Sharice Davids, and frankly, what that has done, what their elections have done, and the elections of other Native women in particular, is that it has galvanized Indian country and young women across Indian country to seek office as well, to ensure that type of representation. And one of those is a candidate for Wisconsin's 92nd district, who has the next question, Amanda White Eagle. You have the floor, Amanda.
Thank you. As I've been campaigning throughout the state of Wisconsin, I've had the opportunity to speak with not only constituents, but also tribal governments. One of the concerns that have been raised, and you touched upon it briefly in your introduction, is about how the coronavirus is affecting small businesses as well as casinos. The questions that I've fielded were more so about the bureaucracy of government. How do you believe a Biden presidency can address bureaucracy when it comes to both Indian country as well as businesses, when it comes to CARES relief for the coronavirus?
Yeah, it's a great point. Look, we know that sometimes we get in our own way, especially federally. Anyone who served in the military, and of course, Native Americans are disproportionately likely to have done so, knows just how stupendously complicated and sometimes self-defeating federal bureaucracy can be. In my experience, what best cuts through that is to have human beings with an understanding of what's at stake. It's one of the reasons I believe in this ticket and in this party. But it's also why I believe in that unglamorous day-to-day work that people are doing on the ground to modernize and reimagine and reinvent these processes, this unsexy work of just getting government right. And when we do it, whether we're talking about CARES Act, whether we're talking about financial relief, whether we're talking about just the day-to-day processes that make it possible for us to get through life, it can make people more free in a very real and empowering sense. And so often this is one of the unsung functions of having empathy in our leaders, but also lived experience. And again, if only because of what the intergovernmental tribal relationship has been like, and what it's been like dealing with the BIA and land in trust. Frankly, tribal citizens have a lot to teach the U.S. as a whole about navigation of bureaucracy and the imperative of simplifying it. So this is something that I think is one of those good government projects that we got a lot of people in our party who believe in fixing. Now, there was a time when I found that sometimes I could reach across the aisle and find Republicans who maybe we didn't agree on a lot of things, but we agreed on figuring out ways to simplify and make more efficient some of those bureaucratic processes. But right now, you got a lot of people in these positions, especially these federally appointed positions, who are simply hostile to the very agencies they lead in their missions, which means they have no interest at all in simplifying them or making them more user-friendly. Of course, the other thing that matters is to have an elected representative who can cut through. That's where the casework side of a great member of Congress or a great representative can make a big difference. And it's one of the reasons we're really excited about your race in the 92nd and pulling for you, knowing what you can do for the people you serve in Wisconsin.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Mayor Pete. I'm going to sort of take the prerogatives of a moderator and ask a question if I could. You spoke eloquently, Mayor Pete, about the vision of what this nation can be in 2 decades. But unfortunately, there's also a competing vision and a darker one. Yesterday, in the category of not surprised but still shocking, the President of the United States was offered the opportunity to repudiate white supremacy and white supremacists. And instead, what he said is, no, they should just stand by, like stand at the ready. And that goes to a much darker vision of this nation. And I wonder if you could just give us your thoughts on the importance of this election in selecting one or the other of those visions.
Well, the way you framed it is exactly right. And it was maybe the most stunning moment of last night. As long as I live, I'll never understand how a sitting president or any political figure can get the question of white supremacy and whether you condemn it and have any answer besides, of course I do. And yet we heard those bizarre words, stand by for what? And we know that there are people out there feeling emboldened now who are committed to a vision of the future that on its face excludes so many. In fact, really excludes most. There's this dialogue about, not dialogue, but this kind of motif about so-called real American. Somebody did the math. If a real American means a white, Christian, Midwestern male, and by the way, I'm all for those things. But if that's what it means, then less than 1 in 5 people in this country even qualify. So this vision, if we can call it a vision, is one that it contains within itself the exclusion of most people. And there's of course a very violent side to this. And this is one more reason why the Native experience can tell us a lot about the violent consequences of allowing that kind of vision to feel, any amount of wiggle room, let alone sympathy, let alone support from the highest office in the land. Look, we're at more than ever, we're at a fork in the road. We can either go this way or that way, and there's no in between. Now, the good news is most people already believe in this better, brighter vision. And if that will of the American people can be reflected rather than frustrated by our democratic and political processes and systems, we will get to a better place. But the greatest empowerment or remedy that our system provides us with is the vote. It's why we got to get everybody to go to iwillvote.com, make the plan, know their rights. And of course, that's different in different locations. So we got to be really smart about this. It all comes down to that abundantly simple thing. Can we get all of our people out to vote? If we do, this will be remembered as the moment that we walked away from all that before it was too late. If we don't, it's the beginning of the end of the American project.
Thank you for those profound words. And thank you for coming and joining us today. We know you're on a challenging schedule, and I don't want to keep you past the allotted time, but I just wanted to invite you to give any final remarks. And again, let me just reiterate our deep appreciation of your leadership and your engagement with Indian country. You have always put it on the top of the agenda. I think throughout Indian country, people have appreciated that deeply. But with that, if you had any final remarks before I know you have to depart, please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I only want to say that, again, your leadership, your energy, your activism is so powerful at a moment like this. And I hope you never underestimate the difference that it could make. So I just want to encourage you and your efforts. I want to assure you that I will be continue to be an ally and a friend before, during, and after Election Day. And I really believe we can give ourselves a lot to celebrate in the month of November. If we see through the work that's in front of us. So please keep up the great work. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay motivated. Miigwech, and I hope to see you again soon.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us.
Take care. Thank you.
So, with that, we're going to introduce some of our other speakers. One of the very impressive things the Biden campaign has done is in its hiring of natives up and down the list. And so I wanted to invite some of those folks to sort of give some an update, words, and just thoughts on where we stand as far as outreach and the native vote. To start off, I'm gonna turn it first to Clara Pratt, who is the national director for tribal engagement for the Biden-Harris campaign. Clara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Harper. It's great to be here and really appreciative to the DNC for all the amazing hard work, and Ryan, Teresa, and all the folks that make the dream work. Man, they've been incredible team members and incredible people to work with on this campaign. My name is Clara Pratt. Yates, Clara Pratt, and Chia Kiani Shne Bilagana Chin, Honolani Dishiche, Tessa Ana de Nasha. So I'm originally from a small community known as Tessa Ana, or where the Red Rock stands. And I joined the team as the Tribal Engagements Director a few months back, and it has been an exciting time. And I just wanted to share with everybody on the call some of the updates that we have from the campaign, and particularly some thoughts about last night. Last night, Joe Biden demonstrated the leadership and the temperament that Americans around the country are looking for. Certainly his words gave me comfort, and his demeanor gave me comfort at a time when unprecedented to have this sort of interaction between potential candidates. But he did take the opportunity to speak directly to us, the American people. He spoke about families and how the crisis of our country is impacting us, and he talked about empty chairs around kitchen tables from family members that are lost to COVID-19. And in Indian country, we know this pandemic has hit our communities especially hard and has laid bare the disparities that we must address moving forward. Joe Biden recognizes the federal government has a treaty and trust responsibility to provide healthcare services to American Indians, and as president, he will work to ensure mandatory funding for the Indian Health Service and build on the Affordable Care Act so that we have the tools that we need to prepare ourselves for this pandemic and any additional things that we see coming forward, which we just don't know. But we do know that the underfunding and the delayed funding for the Indian Health Service certainly did not do us any favors in the COVID-19 pandemic. We also understand that Joe Biden understands and respects tribal sovereignty and the federal trust responsibility, and he's made a commitment to nominate and appoint people who look like us, the people that we serve, including Native Americans, to positions throughout the federal government. So we saw that certainly under the Obama-Biden administration. Both President Newland and Ambassador Harper were wonderful advocates serving in that administration, and we know that Joe Biden commits to do the same in a Biden-Harris administration. He's also committed to bringing back the Native American White House Tribal Leaders Summit and reinstating permanently the White House Tribal roundtables and federal government employees that when they get together to discuss policy, something that we saw is just now being implemented 4 years into a presidency. Further, he has made a commitment to tackle the crisis of missing, murdered, and Indigenous women. As the original author of the Violence Against Women Act, he fought for the tribe's rightful authority to protect Native women through the Act's 2013 reauthorization. As president, he has committed to further expanding tribal jurisdiction to help tackle the epidemic of violence against Indigenous women and girls. He's also made a priority to restore tribal lands and protect the natural and cultural resources within them. He will work to take land into trust and support tribal water rights. We saw an unprecedented number of tribal water rights settled under the Obama-Biden administration. He's made that same commitment to settle those water rights with various tribes throughout the United States. He's also made a commitment to invest in our Native students by dramatically increasing funding for both public and Bureau of Indian Education schools. He will ensure that every Native student has access to education beyond high school, and he will double the maximum value of the Pell Grant to support students with tuition and other expenses. He will double the maximum value of those Pell Grants, and that will include two-year tribal colleges and universities, and providing two-year educations without debt. And he will invest $70 billion in tribal colleges and minority-serving institutions. In addition, I think there's so many things that we could discuss, but his record on protecting the environment, the commitment to get us to a 100% clean energy economy by 2050, and ensuring that Indian country is part of that new energy economy. He did release a robust plan to expand economic and community development across the nation, including in Indian country. He's asked for transformational investment in our infrastructure, increasing the affordable housing supply by expanding funding for the Indian Housing Block Grant, and ensure that no one has to spend more than 30% of their income on rent or housing. And he'll tackle persistent poverty by allocating 10% of federal funding to counties where 20% of people have lived in poverty for 30 years or more, which by and large are large swaths of Indian country. And last but not least, and certainly germane to the discussion today, is fighting for Native voting rights. Unfortunately, we know that Native voting rights are still under attack in many states. And as president, he will continue to not only protect the right of American Indian and Alaska Natives' right to vote, but he's going to make it easier for us to vote. This includes leading the way to restore the Voting Rights Act, and appointing leaders to the Department of Justice who will challenge every single law designed to suppress the Native vote, whether that's a voter ID law or reduced polling places. And he will work to ensure Native Americans and voters have access to additional voter registration sites and polling locations, and that we can use our tribal ID card to vote if their states require a voter ID. So with all that, there's a lot in there, but I wanted to make sure to share some of that today. But we have the power to change the path of this country and to win this election. The path of the White House goes through Indian country. So I just wanted to make sure that we know that it's imperative that we vote. Go to iwillvote.com. Please visit us at joebiden.com. We do have plenty of opportunities for volunteers. We have a lot of people that are coming out of the woodwork post that debate last night to say, hey, what can I do to help? What can I do to get the word out in our communities? So please visit us, iwillvote.com, as well as joebiden.com, to pitch a hand in. And whether it's making phone calls from your couch while eating your favorite bowl of ice cream, like I tend to do lately, or texting your friends or visiting your tribal relatives and communities where you can do so safely, we just encourage you to get the vote out for Indian country. So with that, thank you, Keith, for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Clara. And look, let me say, we know how tireless you've been in your efforts, and I think we in Indian country all are just gratified at all that you've done in the short time in which you've led the charge here, and we appreciate all of your efforts. So with that, I was going to invite Arvina Martin, who's of course, elections break down to battleground states. It's just the way it is under our constitutional system. And one of the battleground states that's most important is Wisconsin. And Arvina Martin is the Native Vote Director from Wisconsin. Arvina, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you to all the caucus members and for everybody in the Native Vote team here. It's been really great to work with all of you. As the Ambassador said, my name is Arvina Martin, and I am the Native Vote Director here in Wisconsin. To give you a little layout of the state and our populations, we have 11 federally recognized tribes here. And we comprise about 1.5% of the Wisconsin population, which at last count, the Native population was approximately 53,000. That might not seem like a lot, and that is all ages, but in 2016, Trump won Wisconsin by 22,748 votes. And we know absolutely that Indian country here in Wisconsin can make a difference and flip this from red back to blue. We are also really excited that we have two Native candidates on the ballot this year. We have Tricia Zunker, a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, running for Congress, which the 7th CD, which is Sean Duffy's former seat, and Amanda White Eagle, who we heard from earlier, asking a question of Mayor Pete, who is also Ho-Chunk and running for the Wisconsin State Assembly District 92 seat. Other things about Wisconsin is that if you are an enrolled member of any of the 11 federally recognized tribes here in Wisconsin, you can use your tribal ID as your proof of identity. We do have some problems sometimes with folks who get their bills at PO boxes and maybe don't get any utilities or paychecks with their home address. And so we are working as well to have people contact their tribes to get an official letter with their address on it, because it counts as a government document that can be used at the polls to register and provide a proof of address. So we are working really hard on making sure everybody knows what they need to vote and figuring out when they need to vote. We have a lot of different deadlines here in Wisconsin. We are currently, you can register online through October 14th. You can register by mail as long as it's postmarked by the 14th of October. And then you can continue to register in person on election day. We have already started our early vote, the absentee balloting. People are mailing in their absentee ballots currently, and it's actually really exciting. We just found out today that of the top 3 counties in Wisconsin that have returned the most of their absentee ballots thus far, besides the first is Dane County, which is in where the capital city of Madison is, but also includes Menominee County, which is basically the Menominee Reservation, and Ashland County, which has the Bad River tribe of Lake Superior, Ojibwe. So both Ashland and Menominee counties are coming in at about 37 to 40% of a return already. So this is really exciting that we can get those ballots in already, and the folks that have already voted can help us get out the vote for everybody else until election day. Excuse me, our vote in person early vote starts, it's statewide on October 20th, but it does vary by municipality, and each municipality does set their own times when people can come in and vote. So we've been trying to get all of the information from all of the municipalities on or near tribal communities, as well as the city of Madison and city of Milwaukee, which have substantial Native populations. If you vote by mail, you can request your ballot either online currently, or you can do it in person, but you do have to have your ballot turned in by October 29th. And then we go into the regular just election day voting. So there's a lot of crazy deadlines, a lot of different ones, and they're not necessarily spread equally, unfortunately, across the state. But the folks that I've been talking to are really concerned about making sure that their votes count and that the votes of their friends and their relatives and other Native folks get counted in this election. So we've been working really hard to make sure that everybody has the correct information so that they know how to cast their ballot and how to make sure it is counted. We do have several events that are coming up, but we unfortunately don't have the Zoom or the links yet because they're still in the works. So stay tuned for a Wisconsin event regarding healthcare disparities, and then also a Get Out the Early Vote rally, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much. If you want to help us out here in Wisconsin, you can email me at arvina.martin@2020victory.com. We also have a Wisconsin Natives for Biden Facebook group if you want to look that up, and you can join us there. Thank you guys so much, and I appreciate the work of every single one of you that is working in Indian country to help us elect Joe Biden and Democrats up and down the ballot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arvina. It sounds like everything is moving in the right direction. So thanks for your hard work. Elections are won on the ground, and so we're very glad to have you there, getting out the vote. It reminds me of an old saying that Democrats win by addition and Republicans win by subtraction. They're trying to subtract our vote. And so we have to redouble our efforts to get out the vote. So thanks for that. Next, we're going to turn to another battleground state, a key battleground state that is clearly in play, Arizona, and Rachel Hood, who is the Native American Outreach Manager for the state, for the Arizona Democratic Party. Rachel, if you can give us an update, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. For inviting me to this meeting. It's an honor to be around these Native American leaders that want to change. And this is the first year that I've seen a difference in regards to elected officials investing in our tribal communities. The Arizona Democrat Party hired me in January. And one of the things that my prior career is I was a former elected official for the Yavapai Apache Nation, so that I think that connection got more interaction with the tribal leaders here in the state of Arizona. So the first thing that we ended up doing is trying to meet with all the 22 tribes in the state of Arizona. But since after, that was pre-COVID, after COVID, we changed our strategy more to these virtual interactions. But Teresa Sheldon has been a great help for the state of Arizona. We've done a couple events here, and I'm so excited to be here with everyone. But let me just go for a brief of what we do right now. So every month we do Native American calls. The purpose is to inform and empower Native American voters on current topics that are important to Arizona Democrat Party. We give updates from the Arizona Democrat Party team, and then we also have an inspired Native American special guest. So the goal here is to have the interaction with the party and our Native communities to let them understand. We want more involvement in the community. We want Arizona Democrat Party to look like the state of Arizona. So we are encouraging more people, Native American communities. They also, at the same time, they did hire an African American outreach manager the same time that they hired me. So the good thing and amazing thing about the Arizona Democrat Party is that they support these initiatives. And this is the reason why I think we've been so successful, that the team and the executive department has supported us. I worked with Teresa Sheldon and part of the team at the DNC to do Native American voter rallies. We just had our last one, I think a week or two. Everything is like blah, going into one. But we had, it was the best. We went out pretty good. We had an amazing panelist. We had youth all the way to tribal leader, inspiring leaders, and also Mark Ruffalo on our call. I thought it was the best one, hearing these inspiring Native American leaders and inspiring leaders talk about how important it is for us to get out the vote. So we worked with, as I mentioned, Teresa Sheldon and the DNC Civic Engagement and Voter Protection, and also with Mission for Arizona, which is Mark Kelly's campaign team. I've interacted with their voter protection to make sure that if anything were to happen in regards to Native Americans involved with the voter protection, that they will, everyone's laughing. Now I see someone in the back, so. But I'm just reading off my thing so I can't see what everyone's doing. So with that, we've done, so the person that encourages me the most to work hard in the state of Arizona, because I want to see it become blue. I've always wanted to see it become blue. Is, I hate to say it, it is our President Trump. Everything he says inspires me to work even harder to make this state blue. And last night, yes, I know we all talked about it earlier, but the things and how our president acted makes me want to work hard. So one of the things that we've implemented is doing Native American phone banking. We focus on a tribe each week, and last week was our last voter phone banking, voter registration phone banking. And what we encourage our Democrat Native American brothers and sisters is to call their friends and family and get them registered to vote. And then we also send off voter registrations to them. So that is one of the things we're going to be working on. Pebble, we called all the 22 tribes in the state of Arizona. Last week was the last one. So now we're going to focus on letting them understand permanent early voting list, the Pebble. And then we are focusing our training and our outreach to the Native American candidates. We have 17 Native American individuals that are running for office in the state of Arizona. It is the historic number for the state of Arizona. And I know I have a couple of people on the call right now that are from Arizona. State Representative Germain's on here. She's always been an advocate for the program. Joanne, who's with the Native American Caucus, is on the call. So these people that are on our call right now, Debbie Nesmanuel, they've all helped me out throughout the state of Arizona, and it's amazing to have Native Americans in the state. We're all coming together, and we all want change. But I don't know if the population here in the state of Arizona is 6% of the state. With that, the urban vote is one of the ones that's really hard for us to get right now. So hopefully we're focusing. We did do a Native American Indigenous logo for AZ Dems, which is amazing. I don't know if you guys seen it yet, but it's in all of my events now. And then hopefully we'll be having a fundraiser and get shirts and merchandise ready out pretty soon. But thank you.
Great, thanks, Rachel, for that. And of course, it's hard to see how you win Arizona without the native vote coming out in substantial numbers. So really appreciate all the work you're doing and others are doing there. So now we're gonna turn it over and invite to present some remarks by the Tribal Engagement Coalition Deputy Director of North Carolina, Crystal Cavalier. Crystal, if you can, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? I live in the rural part. Okay, good. So my name is Crystal Cavalier. Mikudame Chin Kiyohe Nahon Pipise, me my Crystal, Watiwa. So I am a citizen of the Okanichi Band of Saponi Nation, and I live here in Mebane, North Carolina. So I live right in the middle of the state. And you know, I saw the need to mobilize natives like in 2019. And so we created a Native American caucus for the state. North Carolina has the most natives in one state east of the Mississippi. And our largest tribe is the Lumbee Nation. We have around 160,000 natives from the last 2010 census data. So it's really important that we get that census data updated for this year. However, we have a problem. We only have 55,000 Native American registered to vote in North Carolina. So we need to mobilize our friends and allies to help get more Natives registered to vote. We have 7 state recognized tribes and 1 federally recognized tribe. A majority of our people live in rural counties. We do have 4 urban organizations throughout the state. So when people leave home in the rural, they usually flock to either Charlotte, Greensboro, the Raleigh area, or Fayetteville. And so we've set up urban organizations there. Getting our voice heard and having a seat at the table is a huge issue here in North Carolina, and we're really lacking in political representation in elected offices. I mean, we are kind of making a small dent, but we need more people in elected positions. So that's why it's real important to get our Native people out to vote. Right now, we have a local school board candidate that's running down in the Waccamaw-Suon area. We have a North Carolina House state representative that's being running for re-election. And then just last year, we had our first Native American woman judge appointed to a seat here in North Carolina. So, I mean, that's really, really huge. Ways that people can engage. So every Tuesday, we have tribal phone banks where you will call American Indians in the state of North Carolina. So from Cherokee all the way to Ahoskie, and it starts at 6 and it goes to 8. And it's all virtual, so we can always use that help. Every Thursday, we have a tribal friends and allies call because we're just really trying to engage people in the state. A few key dates for North Carolina. So we have already started voting. We started getting our absentee ballots back September the 4th. So people have been requesting absentee ballots, and then we've been doing, making sure people have witnesses and making sure things are okay. We have been hit with COVID pretty bad, and especially in our Native communities. So we are encouraging social distancing and, masking up and hand sanitizer. October 15th is the first day for early voting, and that goes until October the 31st. So it's really important that you get out there on October the 15th and, do that early vote. You can also do same day registration on October the 15th. October 9th is our regular last day to register someone to vote. So we have voter registration drives happening all the way up until October the 8th across the state. And our election day is, November the 3rd. So, we are moving into our last 4 weeks, and we're doing, this is our get out to vote efforts, and we really need more Natives in the state, from Cherokee to Ahoskie, registered to vote. This little app called the Vote Joe app is really wonderful. I've spammed just about all of my friends and family, asking them to download the Vote Joe app and register, because I really want us to get up on those points. I'm kind of competitive that way. So I really want to move our numbers up. So that's really important to do that, and then register with the tribal section. And Clara could probably give you that number. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's it. That's me. So thank you so much. I'm very honored to be on this call with you guys. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Crystal. We have one other update, and that's from the great state of Minnesota. Minnesota, of course, went in 2016 to the Democrats, but Trump has been more popular than we would like there. So it's in the competitive column. So we're going to hear from Rachel Banks Cupshow. She's the Native Engagement Director from Minnesota. Rachel, you have the floor.
Chimagwich, Mr. Ambassador. Bonjour, Rachel Banks Cupshow, again from the great state of Minnesota. Yes, Minnesota is extremely competitive because Trump is convinced he's going to take Minnesota. He's so convinced he's here again today, in fact. So here we have 11 federally recognized tribes. The Native population is 1% of the total state population, which is about 65,000. And back in 2016, Trump only lost by 44,000 votes. So we can affect the outcome of the election here, very much so. So our activities here in Minnesota are really focused on registering the voters that have never turned out before, ensuring that folks that have had felonies in our communities know what their rights are, and ensuring that they are registered to vote. making sure that folks apply for their absentee ballots and are doing as much early voting as possible. We have had early voting in person that started September 18th. And of course, the absentee ballot voting as well. So we're encouraging as much early voting as possible. Right now, too, we're working with the White Earth Nation up in Northwest Minnesota, who has had a lot of issues with, they vote exclusively off reservation. And so we are working to get them pop-up polling locations so that they can vote safely and securely on reservation. There have been a lot of discriminatory practices, and so we want to make sure that the White Earth Nation can vote safely and fairly. Let's see, as far as the youth vote, we are working a lot and targeting our 18 to 24 youth vote. And I can actually announce here, this was just decided yesterday, we're gonna, in Minnesota, hold a t-shirt design contest. And we are going to award the winner of the design contest $2,000. And once we pick that design contest winner, then we will, the DFL will print that t-shirt and disperse among Indian country here in Minnesota. And beyond that, if it's so awesome, we'll make sure that folks in other states can get them as well. Also, another thing that we want to be sure of is that our unsheltered relatives in the urban communities are able to vote as well. In 2018, we had, of course, the Wall of Forgotten Natives, and we made sure that that area was included in one of the voting precincts. So we have encampments all over the city, and so we are ensuring that folks are able to, that those precincts acknowledge those encampments, and that we have folks at the ready to vouch for people. Registered voters are able to vouch for folks that are in the encampments, because we want to make sure that everyone has access to voting. Let's see, our voter registration deadline is October 13th. And at this point, our highest voter turnout in the state is up in Congressional District 8, which is the northeast corner of the state, often referred to as the Arrowhead region. And that includes Boys Fort, Grand Portage, Fond du Lac, Leech Lake, and Mille Lacs. So that is about all I have. I could talk forever and a day about all of this. There's a lot of really exciting stuff happening. Chimagwech for your time, and looking forward to ensuring that we have actual leadership in the White House.
Thank you, Rachel, and I completely agree with that sentiment. I'm just going to say two little things and then turn it back over to Ryan, my brother Ryan Ramirez, to close us out. The first is, I want you to take a look at this screen, and we are being led by our Native women, and I will bet on that at any time. So you guys your leadership is extraordinary. The second thing I want to say is thank you to Teresa Sheldon on this call in so many countless ways. You know, I'm as likely to get an email at 11:30 at night as I'm going to get one at 4 in the morning from Teresa. So she is tireless, steadfast, and she has made a tremendous difference. I remember in the 90s when we were just happy to have somebody in the DNC, one person working half-time. And now look at all of you who are helping Indian country, but also helping elect a real president. So Teresa, thanks so much for everything you do. And with that, let me turn it back over to our chairman of the caucus, Ryan Ramirez, to close us out. Ryan?
Thank you, Keith. You know, great job. And I think, you know, what we heard today was just how important this election is for all of us, for all of our grandparents, for all of those folks that never had the opportunity to vote, you know, in their lifetime. We have the opportunity to have a profound impact going forward. So Let's all remember that, and let's remember, you know, the fact that, you know, things could get a whole lot worse for us. There's a termination, all the other things that have occurred throughout our history in that regard. And, you know, we have the opportunity and we have the voice and we have the ability to get out and vote and make a profound difference. We in Indian country can truly rock and change this vote. So I'm counting on everybody. Looking forward to having another one of these wonderful calls next week. And please let Teresa and I know, you know, if you need anything. All of us here that spoke today, you know, are ready, willing, and able to get out and do everything we can to help make sure your vote is counted. So thank you all for joining us. Chimigwich, have a wonderful day and keep up the fight. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good job, everyone.
Bye.